Found without a name. John and Jane Does. Unidentified for decades. Families without answers. Everyone deserves dignity, even in death. Here are the cases that need your help to restore the names to the faces. 19 investigates. Unidentified.
It's been called the nation's silent mass disaster. More than 40,000 human remains are unidentified across the United States. So many families without answers. What happened to their missing loved ones? Thanks for joining us. I'm Sarah Goldenberg. There are just over 100 John and Jane Doe cases here in Ohio. We're profiling some of their cases in hopes of finding answers for their families. Our first case is a mystery nearly 50 years old. This Jane Doe's suspicious death has remained unsolved without her name. Creeks and rivers cut through patches of farmland in Ottawa County, not far from Sandusky Bay. Here, a mystery clouded by time lives on at Muddy Creek. Who was the woman duck hunters found lying naked and lifeless on these banks one October day back in 1975? How did she die and why did she wind up here?
This used to be a roadway.
Ottawa County Sheriff Steve Lavorchuk took us to the scene. We battled biting mosquitoes and tall brush to get to the spot where her body was found.
You can see the water through here.
Houses now line the creek in Oak Harbor.
In the 70s, do you think it was much different?
I know at that time this was a traveled roadway. It was a stone drive. A lot of the kids would come out here and hang out in the evenings and that.
The woman hadn't been dead long, maybe a week or so. Investigators released this post-mortem photo to the newspaper, hoping someone would recognize her. They took dental impressions and checked missing persons cases, but no luck. Here are the clues left behind. She was white, 20 to 35 years old, about 5'3" and 140 pounds. She had brown or reddish shoulder-length hair and brown or hazel eyes. She had pierced ears and was a smoker.
So all of this would drain into the Sandusky Bay.
Aaron Leist, captain of operations, is now working the case.
She had some distinctive things that they were looking at, a ring that was a Celtic knot or a love knot ring style. She also had a gap in her front teeth and damage to her teeth.
Another clue, they believed she had at least one child. And it's very possible she's not from here.
This is a very remote area of Ottawa County, and these creeks and rivers all drain into the lake and bay. So it's just one of those where you wonder, you know, was she dropped here? Was she dropped further upstream? But somebody that might have just been out driving, and this is the perfect opportunity.
The big question, was this a murder? Investigators are re-examining her cause of death, listed as a drowning at the time.
But obviously finding her completely nude in October is pretty unlikely that that was an accidental.
About 8 years ago, this cold case got fresh eyes, and the FBI put up billboards in the Toledo area with this artist's sketch. Her sketch, I thought, was just so haunting.
Yes, I think that this type of drawing gives that face life through the eyes that you could see. I think it would draw the attention of somebody that maybe is missing a loved one or a friend that is trying to get answers. I think that's a great picture, so yes.
Captain Leist followed up on several tips recently, including trying to match up missing persons cases, but they didn't pan out.
So we will follow every tip and work every tip.
So for now, Ottawa County's Jane Doe remains here, next to a river, a cross marking the spot where she's buried, without a name and a family. A cold case investigators hope they can finally crack, so this isn't her final resting place.
This young lady was buried in the pauper cemetery. She should be with her family. If they've passed also, then she should at least be buried with them.
It would be an answered prayer to find out, and I feel confident that we'll get some kind of answer. At least some more answers, for sure.
Investigators exhumed Ottawa County Jane Doe's body for DNA and may try investigative genetic genealogy in hopes of matching her to a family member. Since our story first aired last fall, they've been tracking down several new leads.
Now, a case about a murder victim with ties to the Jamaican mob in Cleveland. Still a Jane Doe more than 30 years later, even though she went by Tanya Green. It turns out that name was an alias. October 1986, Cleveland Heights. This woman was beaten, shot 11 times, and pushed out of a moving vehicle. A notorious drug dealer later charged with her death. Here's what we know about the woman called Tanya. She was African American, between 32 and 42 years old, 5'6" and 119 pounds. She had black hair and brown eyes. Here's Roger Bamberger, Assistant U.S. Attorney in Cleveland at the time.
Every day it seems you hear the news, somebody finding out years later that they had a loved one who is no longer on the earth, and that's a tragedy.
This man fell off Castle Rock Cliff in 1981 to his death. He's remained a John Doe ever since. He called himself Joe and met up with some guys for a few drinks in South Euclid before the tragic accident. Witnesses told police he was from Los Angeles, but they couldn't track down his identity. Here's what we know about the man called Joe. He was white, 25 to 30 years old, 5'7" and 146 pounds. He had brown eyes and brown hair. He was wearing layers of clothing, including ankle-high boots and a Don Bosco Tech shirt.
We have over 100 unidentified remains here in Ohio alone, so there's plenty of people that are found that just need to be brought back to their loved ones.
Our next case has been cold for nearly 30 years. The body of this woman washed up on the shores of Lake Erie near Cedar Point in Sandusky. Several clues could help you identify her.
As spring took hold on Lake Erie, the tide brought in a mystery under the shadows of roller coasters at Cedar Point. In May 1996, someone walking along the shoreline found a woman's body caught in the boulders just off the Cedar Point Chaussee in Sandusky.
But she'd have been right about down here, right up against these rocks and inside of all these little coves here.
Who was she and how did she get here? The lake's currents could have carried her body from Toledo or Detroit, even Canada. Or maybe she was in town just visiting.
People come from all over the globe to come here, even back then.
Yeah, so she really could.
She could literally be from anywhere.
Detective Eric Costanti with Sandusky Police says usually this area is pretty secluded.
It's a very, very affluent area. $1 million homes are along the water, right on the waterfront.
The coroner estimated this woman had been in the water for at least 6 months, and he couldn't determine her cause of death.
This is very sad. I mean, this is someone's family member out here who's been missing, and they have no answers on this. This has been a long time. This is a tragedy for this person's family and for her to be out here and being unknown and identified. It's very sad.
But thanks to forensic science, sketch artists were able to come up with these drawings and a facial reconstruction.
So they give her a front face shot and a side shot here. Also, with the same complexion, there's a couple different views of her in this way.
Who was Sandusky's Jane Doe? Investigators had these clues to work with. She was between 35 and 45 years old, biracial with brown hair and an unknown eye color. She was 5'8" and weighed around 130 to 145 pounds. She was missing several front teeth, had 2 piercings in each ear, and long manicured fingernails. And somewhere out there, a child was missing her. The coroner believed she was someone's mother. Autopsy reports show she had several surgeries, including an appendectomy, a hysterectomy, and a gallbladder operation.
So especially if we start to get more potential leads to her identity, we could start to find out some of those medical conditions that may have led to those things and match them up.
And another clue, investigators found a 14-karat white gold ring with a solitaire diamond on her right ring finger, inscribed with the letters CE.
She was wearing a piece of a wedding set. We took some photographs of that. We have to try to, it was a pretty unique set, the way it was done, so hopefully somebody may recognize that set we kept.
countless hours of tracking down leads over the years haven't gotten them any closer to finding Jane Doe's real name.
I mean, we're talking BCI agencies have come in. We've canvassed every place we can around here, talked to numerous people from different police agencies, siphoned through tons of missing person reports, getting things from names back, getting teletypes back. It's just been a lot of stuff.
Her body was cremated, so DNA won't help solve this case.
The big challenge in that is that in today's technology, DNA has advanced so far, and a lot of these unknown bodies have been identified through DNA testing. That does not exist, that possibility doesn't exist because she's been cremated. So now we have nothing to send or submit to a lab to try to go that route to identify her.
You need people to come forward who may have known this person more than ever.
Yes, yes. Without somebody who knows who she is or knows what may have happened to her, it'd be very difficult to identify her.
Sandusky police are still hopeful they'll identify their Jane Doe. They recently solved another Jane Doe case thanks to DNA and genealogy. Coming up, digital forensic images give a new face to a John Doe. Will it be enough to solve the case? From DNA and genealogy to digital images created by forensic artists, new technology is helping detectives solve more John and Jane Doe cases every day. Will it be enough to solve a 20-year-old cold case murder out of Stark County?
Just 5 miles south of downtown Canton, rolling hills and farmland feel far from the city. Christmas lights lit up houses on the day of a grisly discovery back in December 2001. A man's skeleton found near this oil well road off Trump Ave. He may have been there for several years, but there weren't too many clues to identify him. This John Doe was African American, 21 to 44 years old, between 5'4" and 6 feet tall. His weight and hair and eye colors all unknown. Over time, leads ran dry, but hope for answers hasn't faded.
And so we're still working it, and that's important for our community to know. We have not given up.
Stark County Sheriff George Meyer reached out to Ohio BCI for help, leading to this, the unveiling of a new facial reconstruction and 3D images.
This person had people who loved him. This person had family. And so we're hoping to make some of those reconnections. That's our goal. Make some of those reconnections, start to work this case backwards from the perspective of let's find somebody that knew this person and work backwards to what actually happened.
That's when we learned this John Doe died tragically. Here's Attorney General Dave Yost.
The evidence is that there may have been a gunshot wound. The nature of the fracture in one of the bones indicates it may have been a projectile. Well, what does that mean? That means we may have a murderer out there. We may have a killer who has never been identified, never been brought to justice. We don't know who that person is. We don't know if they're doing other crimes and other harm. That kind of keeps me awake at night.
But before investigators can solve this crime, they need to uncover who the victim was.
Nothing can really be done until we figure out who this person is.
And that's where Samantha Molnar comes in. She's a criminal intelligence analyst and forensic artist. She created this lifelike reconstruction.
So underneath here is just a plastic copy of the skull, and then I start with the muscle structure.
She looks for something unique to highlight in every case.
And the thing that I thought was most interesting is how soft of a brow ridge that he had.
But now, a finished reconstruction like this isn't the last step.
Now with new technology, we're actually able to just take pictures with an iPhone, and then all those pictures are uploaded into a software that can generate that 3D object, which is really neat. And it happens really quickly, and so it speeds up the process.
This is the first case Ohio BCI highlighted using new technology called photogrammetry with help from Ohio State University. They can change unknown details like skin tone, eye color, hairstyle, and even their age.
I think it just makes it more human and more real, and I think it draws more people's attention, and I think it kind of draws their hearts in a little bit more, and they want to to share it and, help get this person identified.
It may not be exactly what this man looked like, but it could be just enough.
I'm just amazed with the work that they can do and the quality of the work.
For someone out there to recognize this man 22 years later.
The DNA Doe Project, a nonprofit group of volunteer genetic genealogists, is now working on this case, hoping to make a match through DNA and genealogy. Sadly, many of these John and Jane Does died tragic deaths, many of them murders. Still ahead, we profile 4 cases from the 1960s to the 2010s. Imagine not knowing what happened to your missing family member for decades, and somewhere out there he or she is buried without a name. Our next 4 cases need your help.
Back in 1969, a child working outside of a house near East 93rd and Kinsman in Cleveland made a disturbing discovery, finding human remains and acid inside of a barrel. Investigators later learned the man inside had been shot 9 times and hit with something in the head. Here's what we know about the barrel man. He was African American, 6'1", and between 28 to 45 years old. He had a rare genetic disorder called Cruzon syndrome. It affects the skull formation, so his face is long. He had a tattoo on his left forearm that said Sally, and some of his upper teeth were gold. Back in 1987, just over 100 miles west of Cleveland in Toledo, a back alley of I-75 lit up in flames. Police found a young woman dead, her body badly burned, and her head wrapped in a blue plastic bag. Here's what we know about Toledo Jane Doe. She was white, 16 to 21 years old, 5'4" to 5'7", weighing around 110 pounds. She had short, dark blonde or light brown hair with a reddish tint, and she received little or poor dental care. Even though drugs were involved, her death is suspicious. Could it have been a cover-up?
I think it's important to me to put a name to her, to give her identity back and give her a place where she can rest properly and a headstone with her name on it.
Back in 1990 in eastern Oklahoma, a semi-truck speeding down the highway overturned, killing the female passenger inside. The driver survived and told state troopers he picked up the woman hitchhiking. It turns out she was last known to be in Cleveland. Here's what we know about LaFleur County Jane Doe. She was African American, between 30 and 50 years old, 5'1" and 87 pounds, with short black hair and brown eyes. And somewhere out there, she has a child. She had a C-section scar. Back in May of 2014, a boater in Lake Erie moved closer to inspect something caught in a breakwall at Burke Lakefront Airport, discovering part of a human skeleton in Cleveland Harbor, still wearing jeans, black work boots, and a belt. Here's what we know about Cleveland Harbor John Doe. He was 45 to 58 years old, 5'3" to 5'11". They don't know his weight or hair color, but he may have had brown eyes.
Thanks to genetic genealogy testing, investigators recently found Cleveland Harbor John Doe was most likely Hispanic. They believe he could be from another country and came to Cleveland on a ship or was working on the docks. Many of these cases have a new chance to be solved thanks to DNA technology and genealogy. Coming up, find out how you can help investigators crack a case. A national database is helping solve John and Jane Doe cases, matching the missing to the unidentified. More than 14,000 unidentified remains are listed in NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. It's a valuable tool for investigators that you can use too.
Detectives, medical examiners, coroners, and families can all use NamUs. When a case comes in, investigators enter the basics and unique details into the database.
And those details for each case can almost act as clues to help you try to match the cases.
Exactly. Everything from height, weight, and hair and eye color all the way to scars, marks, and tattoos, which can be entered in NamUs as well.
Chuck Herrick, a former forensic DNA analyst, has been leading NamUs for years. He's a senior physical scientist with the National Institute of Justice. He says their focus is on families.
It's our job to let them know what happened to that person, to identify that person, and even in the worst case scenario, bring some sort of resolution to that family or those friends that have that person missing.
Besides comparing cases on NamUs, how else can you help? You can donate to nonprofit organizations like the DNA Doe Project, who use crowdsourcing for cases to pay for DNA testing and investigative genetic genealogy. You can also upload your DNA profile to public ancestry websites GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA and opt in for law enforcement searches. Lisa Fanning volunteers her time as an investigative genetic genealogist for the DNA Doe Project.
Every individual who is unidentified, has been missing from their family for some time, deserves to be identified. And they deserve to be connected back with their families. And families deserve to have the remains of those that they love. And I think we have the technology now to make that happen.
If you think you recognized any of these John or Jane Does we profiled, one phone call to investigators could help solve a case. Find out who you can call for each case and watch more unidentified stories by scanning the QR code on your screen. Or you can go to cleveland19.com/unidentified. I'm Sarah Goldenberg. Thanks for watching.